She wasn't supposed to be there. A quiet young woman, books in her arms, late for class, walked into the wrong lecture hall. But in that mistake, history was waiting. 12 professors, months of failed research, and an equation that even NASA couldn't solve. All rewritten by one girl who wasn't even on the attendance list. They laughed when she raised her hand. They stopped laughing when she picked up the chalk. This is the story of Maya Carter. The girl who turned a wrong turn into a moment that changed science, forever. Music swells, fade to title. She walked into the wrong lecture, and solved what 12 professors couldn't. Studio microphone, you're watching Raw Tales Stories, where every story is real, raw, and unforgettable. The rain fell harder than expected that morning. A drizzle that turned into a downpour, the kind that soaks your shoes, your books, and your patience. Ava Thompson hurried across the old stone courtyard of Westbridge University, her notebook clutched under her arm, her hoodie pulled tight over her braids. She was late. Again. Inside, the hallway buzzed with students, some in suits, others in lab coats, everyone rushing somewhere important. But Ava didn't look like one of them. She wore a simple thrifted jacket, sneakers with one untied lace, and the kind of look that said, "I've been running all morning." Her part-time shift at the cafe had ended barely 30 minutes ago. She hadn't even eaten breakfast. All she wanted was to make it to her literature class on time. But fate, and one misread sign, had other plans. Door creaks open. Sound of chalk scratching on a board. She pushed open the lecture hall door quietly, hoping to slip in unnoticed. The moment she did, every head turned. Dozens of grad students in crisp shirts looked up from their notebooks. At the front of the room stood Dr. Leonard Gray, white-haired, sharp suit, the kind of man whose presence demanded silence. His hand froze mid-equation on the chalkboard. "Can I help you, miss?" Ava blinked. She looked around. The slides on the screen behind him weren't about Shakespeare or modern American literature. They were filled with dense equations, physics symbols, and graphs that looked like hieroglyphs to her. She whispered, embarrassed, "Oh, I'm sorry. I think I'm in the wrong class." Laughter rippled through the room. A few students chuckled under their breath. Dr. Gray didn't laugh. He simply adjusted his glasses. "Yes, I believe you are. This is advanced theoretical physics, not English 201. Right. Sorry, sir." She turned to leave, cheeks burning. But then she froze. On the chalkboard, right behind Dr. Gray, was a pattern of numbers and symbols. To anyone else, it looked like chaos, but to Ava, it looked familiar. Beautiful, even. The way the numbers aligned, the way they seemed to rhyme visually, it reminded her of poetry. Soft sound design, the world fades, heartbeat sound, faint music builds tension. Her mind started connecting things. One part looked like a sequence she'd seen in a book about Fibonacci poetry. Another resembled the rhythm patterns she'd studied in African oral literature. She stepped forward before she could stop herself. Excuse me?" Dr. Gray turned, eyebrows raised. "Yes? Your symmetry, it's off." The room went silent. Then, laughter again, louder this time. One student whispered, "What symmetry? She thinks it's art class?" Dr. Gray's face stiffened. "Miss Thompson," she said. "Ava Thompson." He crossed his arms. "Miss Thompson, this problem has been under discussion by 12 professors and 3 research departments. I assure you, our symmetry is fine." Ava looked at the board again, frowning. "It just doesn't balance. Like, the pattern starts strong, but it dies halfway. I don't think your constant belongs there." The laughter stopped this time. A few students leaned forward. Dr. Gray smirked. "You don't think our constant belongs there? Miss Thompson, are you familiar with tensor calculus?" "No, sir." "String theory?" "No." "Quantum symmetry groups?" "No, sir." He paused, amused. "Then perhaps you should stick to literature." Ava's lips parted, but she said nothing. She nodded politely, eyes lowered. "Yes, sir." and as she left, whispers followed her. She's crazy. Symmetry? What does she even mean? Sound fades to quiet footsteps in the hall. Rain continues outside. She stepped into a hallway, blinking back frustration. She wasn't angry, just embarrassed. How could she explain that she saw numbers differently? That sometimes patterns looked like melodies in her head? She muttered to herself. I really need to learn how to mind my business. But deep down, something in her heart said otherwise. She could feel that something on that board wasn't right. Not mathematically, but rhythmically. The same instinct that helped her write perfect sonnets told her there was a missing beat in that formula. Transition sound, coffee machine, background chatter. Later that evening, at the campus cafe where she worked, Ava replayed the moment in her mind. As she wiped down a table, she whispered the numbers she'd seen. Her hand reached for a napkin, and she began scribbling the equation from memory. Customers came and went, but she didn't notice. Her pen moved fast. The numbers rearranged themselves, like poetry finding its rhythm. Her coworker, Malik, noticed her zoning out. Yo, Ava. You solving world hunger or what? She smiled faintly. Just trying to make sense of something I saw today. Girl, you always think too deep. Maybe. But sometimes, the answers hide in plain sight. She folded the napkin carefully and tucked it into her notebook. That night, as the cafe lights dimmed, Ava whispered to herself. Maybe I wasn't in the wrong room after all. And that's how it began. A quiet mistake that wasn't a mistake at all. A door she wasn't supposed to open, yet somehow, destiny had been waiting behind it. While 12 professors debated the impossible, a young woman with no degree in physics had already seen the solution written between the lines. Morning sunlight spilled across Westbridge University like gold brushing over old brick walls. Students rushed between classes, clutching coffee cups and backpacks, chasing deadlines, dreams, and something in between. But for Ava Thompson, today wasn't just another day. She sat quietly on a bench near the physics building, her hoodie pulled low, notebook on her lap. On the first page, that same napkin from last night, now flattened and carefully taped in place. Equations. Patterns. Arrows connecting fragments of thought. What she didn't realize was that her wrong lecture yesterday had ignited something deep inside, a hunger she hadn't felt in years. Flashback sound, echo of laughter in the classroom, the professor's voice. Perhaps you should stick to literature. Ava's jaw tightened at the memory. He didn't mean to humiliate her, maybe, but it still stung. Because it reminded her of something she'd been running from since high school, that quiet voice that always whispered, "You don't belong here." And yet, she couldn't stop thinking about that equation. Even as the rain dried and the morning sun rose, the pattern kept dancing in her mind like a half-finished poem begging to be completed. Sound cue, footsteps echoing in marble hallway. Door creaks open again. By mid-morning, Ava found herself standing in front of that same lecture hall. She told herself she was just passing by. Just curious. But curiosity is a dangerous thing. Through the half-open door, she saw Dr. Leonard Gray again, pacing slowly as he scribbled formulas across the massive chalkboard. This time, he wasn't alone. 4 visiting professors sat in the front row, each with papers, laptops, and puzzled faces. They were deep in debate. Voices overlapping. Equations on every board. The atmosphere buzzed with intensity, like the room itself was holding its breath. Ava leaned closer. One professor groaned. "We've been through 12 models, Leonard. Every approach collapses at the constant. It's mathematically unsolvable under current conditions." Dr. Gray sighed. "I know. But it should work. We're missing something fundamental," Ava whispered under her breath. "Your symmetry." Then, as if drawn by fate, Dr. Gray looked toward the door. Their eyes met. He froze, then frowned. "Miss Thompson." The room turned. All eyes landed on her again. She hesitated, embarrassed. "I didn't mean to interrupt. You're interrupting a private research session." he cut in sharply. Ava nodded quickly. I know. But I think I might have found something. The professors chuckled softly. Found something? Miss, we've been at this for 2 years. She swallowed. Maybe not found it. But seen it differently. Dr. Gray raised an eyebrow, skeptical but curious. Differently? And you're still not a physics major, I presume? No, sir. English lit. But I think that's why I saw it. The room fell quiet again, a mix of disbelief and annoyance. Music fades in, slow build, tense strings. Chalk sound as she approaches the board. Ava walked to the chalkboard, palms sweating. Her heart pounded loud enough she could hear it. She picked up a piece of chalk, stared at the wall of equations, and took a deep breath. Okay, she whispered. You're treating this like it's rigid. But look, see how the variable repeats like a beat? 1 2 3 1 2 3. Miss Thompson, these are tensors, not musical notes. One professor muttered. Maybe not, she said, smiling faintly. But rhythm is rhythm, whether it's words or numbers. She circled a symbol near the bottom and said, Here. You keep trying to balance this constant on both sides, but it's not supposed to mirror. It's supposed to echo. The professors exchanged glances. Echo? Yes. You're using a reflection model. But what if it's recursive? Like a line of poetry that calls back to itself. Dr. Gray tilted his head. Show me. Ava's hands trembled as she erased part of the board and replaced 2 symbols with curved brackets. Her movements were hesitant at first, then confident, as if the math flowed naturally through her intuition. When she finished, she stepped back and whispered, Now it's balanced. Silence. The professor stared. Then, slowly, one leaned forward. His eyes widened. Wait. If that's correct, then the variable isn't collapsing. It's stabilizing across dimensions. Another muttered. She just resolved the recursive symmetry. Dr. Gray's chalk dropped from his hand. He stared at the board like he was seeing it for the first time. That's impossible. Ava smiled softly. Maybe. Or maybe you were just missing the rhythm. Soft orchestral swell, a tone of awe and disbelief. For the next hour, the room transformed. Professors debated, recalculated, double-checked. Every time they ran the numbers, it worked. Her adjustment, that echo, she mentioned, closed a mathematical gap that had eluded experts for years. Dr. Gray finally turned to her, his voice quieter this time. Miss Thompson, how did you see that? She shrugged. I didn't. I felt it. A long silence. Then one professor murmured. Sometimes, intuition is just another kind of intelligence. Bell rings softly in distance. Ava smiles, exhausted. As students began filling in for the next class, Ava backed away. Thank you for letting me speak, sir. Dr. Gray didn't respond right away. He was still staring at the board, that single change glowing like revelation. Finally, he said quietly, Miss Thompson, don't go too far. We'll need to talk. That night, Ava walked home under the same soft rain that had brought her to the wrong classroom the day before. Except this time, she didn't feel lost. Sometimes the doors we're not meant to open are the ones that change everything. The next morning, something strange was happening across Westbridge University. Theoretical physics wasn't exactly headline material, yet that morning, whispers spread like wildfire. Did you hear? Some literature students solved the unsolvable. No way, just a rumor. Ava Thompson had no idea her name was already being passed between research labs and faculty lounges. She woke up late, bleary-eyed, and unaware that her quiet correction on a chalkboard had shaken the entire department. Soft acoustic music fades in, introspective tone. She was back at the cafe, pouring coffee for a line of impatient students. Her apron was wrinkled, her eyes still tired from the night before. But inside she felt something new, something almost like pride. Every time she thought about Dr. Gray's stunned face, she smiled quietly. Not out of arrogance, but relief. For once, she wasn't the one being laughed at. Malik, her co-worker, leaned on the counter. Yo, superstar. Ava laughed. What are you talking about? Girl, your name's been floating around Twitter all morning. Something about you and some professor's big math discovery? Ava froze mid-pour. Wait, what? He turned his phone toward her. There it was, a blurry photo of her at the chalkboard. The caption read, English Lit student challenges top physicists, and wins. Her heart started racing. Oh no. I didn't mean for it to. Malik grinned. You just broke the internet, Ava. You're famous. She smiled nervously, but deep down, she felt something else, fear. Transition sound, doorbell chimes. New ambience, university hallway, echoing footsteps. By noon, Ava was summoned to the dean's office. She sat outside nervously, notebook in hand, while students walked past whispering. She could feel the eyes. The curiosity. The doubt. When her name was finally called, she stepped into the grand office lined with books and framed degrees. Behind the desk sat Dean Wallace, a tall woman with gray streaks in her hair and sharp eyes that could cut through pretense. Beside her, Dr. Leonard Gray. Dean Wallace gestured toward the seat. Miss Thompson. Sit down. Ava obeyed, her hands trembling slightly. I assume you're aware of the attention your actions have caused? Yes, ma'am. I'm sorry if I disrupted. No. Disruption isn't always a bad thing. Dr. Gray glanced at Ava but said nothing. His face was unreadable. The dean continued. Dr. Gray's department has been investigating a theoretical constant for nearly 3 years. Your correction, as you called it, seems to have resolved a significant mathematical inconsistency. Ava nodded slowly. I just saw a pattern. I didn't mean to interfere. Interfere? The dean repeated, leaning forward. Miss Thompson, you may have stumbled onto one of the most important findings our department has seen in a decade. Music shifts, hopeful strings, building curiosity. Dr. Gray finally spoke, his tone calmer this time. We've spent all night verifying your model. It holds up under every simulation. Even the visiting professors confirmed it. Ava's eyes widened. It really works? It does, he admitted. You corrected what 12 experts couldn't. And you did it because you listened differently. A long silence hung in the air. Then the dean smiled faintly. Westbridge University prides itself on brilliance in unexpected places. We'd like to offer you a research fellowship, effective immediately. Ava's mouth fell open. A fellowship? But I'm not even in the physics department. You will be, the dean said, standing. You'll have mentorship under Dr. Gray, assuming he's willing. Dr. Gray hesitated, then nodded. Yes. I'll supervise her work personally. Ava blinked, barely able to breathe. Thank you? I don't know what to say. Say you'll keep showing up, the dean said softly. Even when the door says you don't belong? Music swells, emotional piano, sound of rain outside window. That afternoon, as Ava walked out of the dean's office, the sky opened again. The rain fell just like it had that first day, soft, steady, cleansing. But this time, it didn't feel like bad luck. It felt like rebirth. She stood in the rain, smiling to herself, whispering, I guess I really wasn't in the wrong lecture. Cut to, interior, Dr. Gray's office, the sound of papers rustling. Later that week, Ava began working under Dr. Gray. He watched quietly as she scribbled ideas across whiteboards filled with equations. There was something about her mind, untrained but alive. You see the world like it's music, he said once. Ava smiled. And you see it like it's war. He chuckled softly, the first real laugh she'd heard from him. Maybe we both have something to learn. Transition, upbeat but thoughtful tone, pages turning, chalk writing, faint laughter. Over the following days, Ava's name spread beyond the campus. A journalist from the Chronicle called. Then a physics journal reached out. Her inbox filled with messages from professors around the world, some congratulating her, others skeptical. But not everyone was happy. Tones shift, deeper, suspenseful music enters. Behind closed doors, a few senior faculty members began whispering. She's not qualified. It's a fluke. Gray's using her for publicity. Some even suggested she must have cheated, or accidentally stumbled upon someone else's unpublished work. When word of the gossip reached her, Ava didn't respond. She just worked harder. Because she knew, every time a black woman stepped into a space they said she didn't belong, someone would always try to shut the door again. Music softens to a steady rhythm, resilience. And while the faculty whispered, Dr. Gray watched silently. He saw the exhaustion behind Ava's smile, the pressure she tried to hide. He saw her fight for every inch of space she'd earned. And that's exactly what makes discovery beautiful. Pause, soft instrumental flourish. Keep that notebook of yours safe, Ava, he added. It may one day change more than equations. She looked at him, puzzled. What do you mean? You'll see. Cinematic close, quiet instrumental outro. That was the moment Ava realized. Recognition wasn't the end of her story. It was just the beginning. Because brilliance has no degree, no permission slip, no assigned lecture hall. Sometimes it just walks through the wrong door and changes everything. Fade to silence, sound of gentle rain and chalk writing fades out. The lecture hall was packed the next morning, not with curious students, but with professors, reporters, and the skeptical board of academics who had dismissed Maya the day before. The tension was thick, heavy enough to weigh down every breath in the room. Dr. Hensley stood at the front, looking unusually nervous. His usual calm, authoritative posture was replaced with a stiff, uncertain stance. Behind him, the massive chalkboard had been cleared, ready for the day's reevaluation, the university's polite way of saying trial. Maya sat quietly at the back, her small notebook in hand, her heart pounding. She had been invited, or rather summoned, to present her impossible solution. She looked down at her trembling hands and whispered, "You can do this, Maya. Just tell the truth, let the math speak." The dean cleared his throat. "Miss Carter, you may begin." The room fell silent. Maya stood, clutching her notebook. Her shoes squeaked slightly as she walked toward the board. Dozens of eyes followed her every step, some filled with curiosity, others with disdain. She picked up a piece of chalk, paused, and turned to the audience. "Yesterday, I walked into this room by accident," she began. "But what I saw on this board, it wasn't just math. It was a story, a question that was begging for the right eyes to see it differently." The professors exchanged glances. Some smirked. Dr. Hensley crossed his arms. "You said you had a solution," he said sharply. "Let's see it." Maya nodded. "You will." And with that, she began to write. Her hand moved quickly, filling the board with clean, precise equations. The sound of chalk echoed through the hall. Tap, slide, tap, tap. Every line connected to the next like the pieces of a puzzle snapping into place. For the first few minutes, most of the professors looked bored, until she reached a section no one had ever been able to simplify. Then their expressions changed. Her symbols twisted into patterns that made sense in ways they hadn't before. Her voice was steady now. "The problem wasn't in the equation itself, it was in how everyone defined the variables. You assumed stability where there was fluctuation." Dr. Hensley frowned, stepping forward. "Wait, what are you doing there?" Maya turned around, chalk still in hand. Her palms were covered in white dust, but her eyes shone. "This isn't about being right," she said softly. "It's about seeing differently. Sometimes we get so used to the same way of thinking, we forget to listen to the problem." She underlined the final part of her equation and stepped back. For a few seconds, no one moved. The entire board, once a battlefield of confusion, now glowed with clarity. Dr. Hensley approached slowly, scanning every step of her work. He paused halfway through, eyes narrowing, lips parting slightly as realization set in. "Oh my God!" he whispered. She solved it. Gasps filled the room. A few students who had sneaked in began clapping. One professor stood up, then another. Within seconds, the room erupted in applause. The dean turned to her, still in disbelief. Miss Carter, do you understand what you've done? This equation has stumped our department for over a decade. NASA researchers gave up on it last year. Maya's voice was gentle but firm. Then maybe they just needed to look at it through new eyes. Reporters began snapping pictures. Microphones were shoved toward her. Everyone wanted to know who she was, this girl who walked into the wrong lecture and rewrote history. But Maya wasn't smiling. She looked down at her chalk-covered hands and said, I'm just someone who loves learning. I didn't mean to show anyone up. Dr. Hensley finally turned toward her, not with pride, not with anger, but with humility. I misjudged you, he said quietly. And I'm sorry. Maya blinked, caught off guard. You have a gift, he continued. I'd like you to join our research team, if you'll have us. The room went silent again. Maya smiled, eyes misty. Thank you, sir. But I think I already know what I want to do next. And what's that? He asked. She looked around the hall, at the students watching, inspired and awed, and said softly, Teach others that intelligence isn't about where you belong, it's about how far you're willing to see. Outside the building, news cameras flashed. Her name began trending within hours. The girl who solved the impossible. But Maya didn't care about the fame. As she walked across campus that evening, the sun warm on her face, she smiled quietly to herself. The world might have seen her as an accident in the beginning, but now they knew she was no mistake. She had walked into the wrong room, but found the right path. The morning after Maya's discovery, the entire campus was buzzing, not with gossip, not with exam talk, but with her name. Posters appeared on walls. News vans lined up by the main gate. And in every corner of the university, someone was whispering. That's her. The girl who walked into the wrong class, and solved it. Maya Carter had become a phenomenon overnight. But to her, fame felt strange, heavy, like a jacket that didn't fit. She wasn't used to interviews, or flashing cameras, or strangers calling her genius. She still woke up every morning, brushed her hair, and packed her old worn notebook like nothing had changed. Except, everything had. It was 3 days after her presentation when she received an unexpected email. Subject line, Request for collaboration, NASA Jet Propulsion Laboratory. Maya froze, staring at the screen. She read the line 3 times before whispering, No way. When she opened the message, it wasn't just a request. It was an invitation. They wanted her to fly to California to meet the research team, the same one that had originally failed to solve the equation she'd cracked. Her mom, a nurse who'd always believed education was the only inheritance worth fighting for, hugged her tightly that night. You see, baby, she said softly, God doesn't make accidents. You walked into the wrong room for the right reason. Maya smiled through her tears. I just hope I make them proud. A week later, as she prepared for her flight, Maya received another visitor, Dr. Hensley. He looked different, less proud, more human. He handed her a brown folder. These are your official research credits, he said quietly. We've decided to publish your paper under your name, and only your name. Maya blinked. You don't have to. He interrupted, shaking his head. No, I do. You earned it. You reminded us what discovery really means. There was a brief silence. Then he smiled, the kind of smile that comes when respect replaces arrogance. You made history, Maya. And I just hope someday, when you're running your own lab, you'll let me audit your lecture. She laughed, her nerves finally breaking into warmth. You'll always have a seat in the front row, Professor. Her story hit national news. CNN, Fox, BBC. Everyone wanted a piece of the student who solved what NASA couldn't. But Maya refused to turn her gift into entertainment. Instead, she spoke about what really mattered: access, education, and opportunity. In one televised interview, when asked how she felt being called a genius. She said, "I'm not a genius. I just didn't believe the problem was impossible. Maybe we need more people who think like that." Those words, simple, humble, went viral. Within days, universities across the country began reevaluating how they treated non-traditional students. Scholarships were created in her name. STEM programs for girls were funded under the title, the Maya Carter Initiative. The camera fades in on a new classroom, bright, full of students from all backgrounds. At the front stands Maya, now a teaching assistant, her chalk moving across the board with confidence and warmth. A student raises her hand timidly. "Miss Carter, I don't think I can solve this. It's too hard." Maya turns, smiling softly. "You know what? That's exactly what 12 professors once said." The room laughs. She winks. "Now let's prove them wrong." That evening, after class, Maya walks past the same lecture hall where it all began, the one she had walked into by accident years ago. She pauses at the doorway, memories flooding back, the confused faces, the laughter, the chalkboard that once seemed to hold the entire world's doubt. Now, the board was clean. Empty. Waiting for the next dreamer to fill it. She whispers to herself, "Never be afraid to walk into the wrong room. You might just find your right purpose." The camera pans out slowly, Maya walking down the hallway, sunlight pouring through tall windows, the echoes of her footsteps blending with the soft hum of students' chatter. Her voice narrates in the background. "They said I didn't belong? But sometimes where you don't belong is exactly where you're meant to be."